Time to check in with Chris Dimakos. He is our CJAD legal contributor. And Chris, we've been talking, of course, tariffs on and on and on over the last week or so. Now, despite the fact that we're getting a 30-day reprieve, there are a lot of people very concerned, including employers, not just employees, as to how this pans out. Some have already decided to start taking steps. So let's deal with that first. What happens in a situation where your employer, for whatever the reason it happens to be, tariff-related, decides he has to make some changes, and that means job cuts? What do you do if you're that employee?
Well, yeah, it's it's the climate right now. The financial climate in Canada is not really stable in terms of what we're seeing on the bankruptcy front. They're up 30% for businesses, and unemployment's up. So if you look at GDP numbers, they're not good. So the many employers are looking at ways to try and navigate through this financial storm. So what happens in this case is what employees are usually, if you have a certain amount of seniority, you've been there for over 2 years in Quebec, and you work at a job, you can only get terminated if there is good reason to, if they have just cause to terminate you. And if they don't, well, then they have to offer you additional notice, which is enough time for you to get back on your feet and find another job. And that's how we work out with, 2, 3, or 4 weeks per year of service. But economic reasons is considered to be, if they're valid, is considered to be a just cause where the employer would not have to give you that extended notice. So what employers often do is that they use that as ground and say, look, we have to let go of this much workforce and this many people because the economy is what it is. And for the listener right now who's at their job and worried about their job, what you should be looking out for is, am I going to be swept up with other employees because of economic reasons? And the employer never really needed to let me go, but they're trying to couple me up with a group just to make it seem like it's economic. But it really wasn't the reason behind me being let go. And that's what a lot of people say, I'm not sure why I got let go. I know why they let go of some of the other individuals, but why am I being let go? And that's the tricky part for many listeners.
Okay. Then it's a matter of determining, first of all, if it's about financial reasons, and those reasons are allowed if you're an employer, obviously, then it's proof. So what do you do? And I know the advice is always, if this happens to you, whatever you do, don't sign anything on the spot, right? You want to spend some time figuring out what's going on. But would this tariff threat be a legitimate issue? That's financial, but it's only potentially financial. Right.
So the consequences haven't hit yet. But again, it's always, I always say this, it's very hard to have a legal debate when the information that's being generated is controlled by the other party. It's very hard for an employee who's on the outside to try and argue what the financial performance of a company is when you have all the internal individuals that are able to produce and not only produce, but they can demonstrate numbers in any way they see fit. But what's really important, I would say, the number one key point that I would ask for if I was an attorney and someone came to see me and said, listen, my company let go of 5 employees. I was one of them. They used economic reasons. I don't think I should have been let go. I'm very different than those other 4. The first thing I would ask for is give me a company, a chart. I want to know where you find yourself and where everyone else finds themselves. And I want to know, does it make sense that you would be let go for financial reasons? Does the company do better? Or would they just replace you right after with somebody else, which would defeat the purpose of saying it was for economic reasons? So it's very important to understand, hey, what department are you in? And are you part of the overhead that they want to let go, or were the other 4 people in one department and you found yourself in a completely different one, but you got coupled with that group? So I always tell everyone, take some time, like you said, don't sign anything, reflect, try to figure out what the company looks like, what's the reasoning behind it, and are they actually letting you go for financial reasons? And if they are, well then, and that's fine. You know that they are, and you have to move on and accept what happened. But usually your gut instincts are pretty good on this. And I trust when people are talking to me, they know really well what's going on in the company, and they can determine whether or not they believe, hey, this doesn't smell right. I should not have been let go for economic reasons. I was I'm being packaged in with a group that I shouldn't be with.
Then you get to the point where, okay, let's say you're out there now, you have to find a new job, right? And whatever field you're in, you think that's probably the easiest thing to start with, something you already know, something you've already done. What's the advice you're in looking for new employment?
Right. So, it's funny you mentioned that. When you look at the unemployment rates, when it's having spoken to so many business owners, and when I've spoke to them about hiring, they actually look for high employment rates, because they are under the impression when the employment rates are really low, when most of the people are working, they find it very hard to find competent workers when the unemployment rate's at 4.5% or 5%. But once it starts going up to where it is now, well, then you start getting some competent people that are usually employed that are not. So if you are someone who's going to be let go or has just been let go, yes, there's a lot of negative data out there, and unemployment and bankruptcies. But at the same time, there are companies that hire a lot during these times, and they look at it as a recruiting opportunity to get employees that were otherwise already employed. So they look at this and say, hey, there's a certain percentage, a segment of the population right now that's not employed that should be, and we want to get their hands on them. So to answer your question, sometimes there's opportunity when you see all this bad data. There's also opportunity for people with companies that are saying, hey, look, there's some people out there, competent people that have been around for 10, 15 years, know the job well. We can pick them up now because they just didn't let go. So it's also an opportunity for many. You shouldn't just look at this like, oh, great, I'm going to be part of all these people that are let go. Sometimes there's a silver lining that you have to look out for.
I would ask one last thing just to wrap up. So let's talk about it from the employer's perspective, right? If you're one of these businesses that is going to be affected by these tariffs, or at least by the threat of these tariffs, and you get to the point where you say, you know what, we're going to have to study this. We know right away this is not going to work out well for us. And you kind of just, you temporarily basically suspend people or lay people off. You don't fire them. You're just saying we need to figure out our way through this. What happens then?
Right. So that's a good point, and companies do exercise that option. You're allowed to lay someone off temporarily, and the job relationship is not severed. You still have a job. You've just been laid off temporarily, and if it goes past a certain time, you go past 6 months. Well, then you're considered to have been let go permanently. But that's an option that companies can use. And while you're being laid off, you still are employed by that company. And you can still try and seek some benefits from the federal government to try and compensate you during that time. But no question that it is an option. And I can tell you this from personal experience. As of Sunday, we've been working, day and night trying to navigate through this with not just what your company's doing, but you have to figure out what every other company is going to be doing with these tariffs, because you rely on them as well. So you're absolutely right. There was a lot of volatility, a lot of uncertainty. And companies, although there is a delay, they haven't let it go. They're still preparing for the possibility of these tariffs going up, because it would change the game drastically.
All right. And that's where we leave it. Chris, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Aaron.